Hi, I'm Gary. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Codeless. I'm glad you joined us today. Now, today I've got two superstars, and we are talking to you right after this Apple announcement, which we already started to talk into what does Apple Vision Pros mean for all of us. But I want to first introduce, like, this is a company you've heard, I mean, it's a company we followed, we work with, we admire what they've been doing, and it's a company called Celonis, which is really created the space of process mining and invented this. So I love category creators, and it's amazing to have this on. So Alex Rinke, who is co-founder and co-CEO of Celonis, and Rudy Kuhn, who's the lead transformation evangelist, join us here today. And this is going to be fun. And so to me, as a category creator, I guess a few years back from probably when you started the journey, I'm looking forward to hearing your advice here and going through this. And before we even start, the last LinkedIn Live, I don't remember how it came up, but the conversation came up of Batman, a favorite Batman. And I was in DC last week meeting with CIOs of our federal government, now FedRAMP certification behind us, which is so huge. And one of the CIOs said, "Hey, I watch all your shows, and Christian Bale's the best Batman." And I was debating with Alex before the show, and we turned it to, forget Batman, Joker's got to be the most complex character to play. So Alex, like just Joker, what do you think? Who is the best Joker?
I thought about this last night, and it's a very, very hard question because obviously Nicholson, then we had Heath Ledger, right, who was amazing, and now Joaquin Phoenix in the most recent one. I would go with Heath Ledger. I think he was just so good, but I think Joaquin Phoenix also did like an amazing job. This movie, I still remember it. I watched it. I went to the cinema on a night. My fiance wasn't in town, and I went to the cinema late at night in New York. I came out. It was rainy, cold outside. I just walked out of the cinema at like 1 a.m. right after watching this movie, The Joker. And it felt like I'm in Gotham City. Right? I was just like waiting for some thugs to come around. So I think that was amazing too. But I'm not sure if anyone can ever beat. Right?
I love it. I see Team Heath is there too as well. I see others even commenting already on that, which is like that. It is a character that like you have to either love or hate or both, but either way, you kind of feel like you're inside their head in some ways. That's the way they played it.
And,
so
I
that
think
is
it's such a complex, to your point, right? It's such a complex character to get right. Yeah.
Very complex. And so with complexity and what you've done within process mining, solve it. Alex, give your story. Rudy, I want to hear your story. Give your intro, Alex, how you got to where you are, and I know everyone loves to hear that.
Yeah, so Celonis started 12 years ago. We were at university in Munich, and we came across a paper of a Dutch professor called Will van der Aalst, who actually today we work with very closely. He's our chief scientific advisor. And back then, nobody really knew him. Today, he's one of the most quoted computer science professors in the world. I think the most quoted in Europe, and one of the most quoted in the world. But back then, he was a small research group that put out papers and research on process mining, which really we'll talk about a lot more today. But is really a way of x-raying and understanding how an organization operates in reality. So it's a automated way of understanding how are my processes really working. For example, if you want to automate them, transform them, improve them. And me and my two co-founders, I was studying math, they were studying computer science. We were involved with some work in IT service management just to make some money on the side at college. That's a common way to put yourself through college in Europe. And we found this really fascinating, that you can take log data and reconstruct business processes and rules from that. And we initially actually thought of it as a way to feed simulation models because we were very academic at the time. We were students, so we thought every company must understand their processes. But if they could simulate them, that would be amazing, right? So we used this process mining technology to create simulation models. And then when we talked to first customers, it was very clear that they don't even understand how their processes work today. That's actually a really hard challenge. So we decided to start a company focused on this technology and really bringing it to market. And here we are, 12 years.
And I know, Alex, like as a CIO that it's automation. And by the way, like automation is the keyword today we hear in every client meeting. And it's all about, especially in economies as we are today, like how do you actually, how do you reduce your costs straight through processing, get through what the promise of technology hasn't yet delivered? And that's the way I always say it, is like the art of the possible hasn't yet achieved what it's supposed to. But I had, as a CEO, I brought in every tool you could name. And the problem wasn't the automation piece. It was getting the individual who's doing the manual work to tell you what they do with enough details to actually be able to automate it. And so we'd celebrate a success of an automation, and we'd find out that there was 200 people in operations and we covered 5 of them, and then 195 did something different, but they never told us.
Yes.
And like that is that where you're jumping in? Is that how you see the space? I'm curious to see if that's.
I think automation is one of the levers, right? I mean, it's very interesting. This whole I think process mining is very agnostic to the type of improvement you're going to make. So whether you're going to rewire your processes, or whether you're going to transform your system landscape, whether you're going to put bots in, or whether you're going to do a combination of all of that, and it really provides you this new superpower to look at every part of your business and understand exactly what's going on in the processes. And then, initially that was more of a static thing. Today it's real time, it's dynamic, it's updating all the time, and it really provides continuous observability of the business process. But I think that I think automation is one good trigger. We speak to a lot of our automation teams, and I know Rudy's very passionate about this as well, that basically say, hey, to your point, kind of, we deployed a bot here, we did something here, we want to do something bigger. Right, like we want to really save $100 million or improve our customer service level by X, and that's where then I think process mining comes in a very big way, because you really understand in a data-driven way, why are we not, doing the same for $100 million less, right? Why are we running this customer service team with 500 people where it should be 250? Or, why do we take 8 days to confirm our customer orders because we have to go through credit checks and all that stuff? Why couldn't it be, 24 hours? And all of these business problems, to really solve them, requires to put data and intelligence at the heart of these organizational processes. And process mining and Celonis deliver this through initial transparency, but then also through real-time observability and orchestration. And we're going to talk. I think there's a lot to unpack here, but that's the high level idea.
One of my favorite leaders I worked for was John Bayman, and he ran ops and tech at Citi when I was there, and his expression always was, operations is just the area technology hasn't gotten to yet. And I saw that firsthand, and I love that expression. To me, I live by that expression, which is, we had like 40,000 people in operations just in capital markets, and I think the call center had another 40,000 people on top of that. And just it is interesting. And so Rudy, tell us your story, Rudy. How did you get to that couch with Alex and the journey there? And please.
Yeah, it has been a long journey. So I came across Will van der Ars already back in 2009. So while Alex was still in university, I was already a business consultant for IBM and some other companies. And then, really by coincidence, I learned about process mining. And I realized, if this really works, if it's really possible to reconstruct processes just from the data, it will change the way or at least I am looking at business processes forever. And if you are a consultant and you try out and you want to find out what's really going on, I mean, what do? You do workshops, right? And probably you have been there. So you sit with some people in the room, everybody will tell you a different story. And after a day of work, you will have more processes than you have participants. And nothing will be completely true, simply because people don't want you to know how bad the situation really is, or they don't know. So that's the challenge. And with process mining, it really changes this whole approach here. You don't longer ask, guys, please tell me, what does the process look like? You take the data, you push a few magic buttons, and you can start the discussion why the process actually looks like this. And if you discover inefficiencies or compliance issues, then of course you can think about automation. But just to chime in on this topic of automation, guys, I have been in automation for the last 4 years, because my company, the company I founded, Process Gold, back in 2010, was acquired by UiPath in 2019. So for the last 4 years, I served as a vice president for process mining and process discovery at UiPath, and that's an automation company, of course. But honestly, not everything we discover with process mining can and should be automated. Like no customer ever said to me, hey, great, you discovered some compliance issues or fraud. Let's automate so it scales better. Of course not. That's something you want to stop. So it's about eliminating, simplifying, standardizing, or automating. Automation is a great, great solution and a great answer, just not to every problem. And process mining will give you the transparency. What should you eliminate? And again, transformation is, most customers, they don't want to automate. They want to become better. And if automation is the way to do it, fine. But it's about transformation, and transformation is about PPT. So not PowerPoint, but people, process, technology. So train people, change the process, apply technology like RPA, like automation. But you first need transparency, and that's exactly what process mining will give you.
Is that, Rudy, you walk into a workshop with a client, and so we do workshops with clients, and we always, to what you said, definitely felt very true. We had one very early customer that we were going to build an entire auto insurance quoting system for agents, and it was and I think Oracle was working 7 years, and we had 7 weeks to do what they did in 7 years. That was the date we were given, and when I remember going to the first workshop, they gave us requirements document. And so our goal, Rudy, was we're new in this we created a category. We're like, we have to prove ourselves. We have to show you, we educate. But what we did was we basically built the whole thing before walking in the meeting. And we walked into the meeting with, we're done. You gave us like 8 requirements documents. You want to see it? Let's walk through it. And their faces dropped, which shocked me. And I thought it was like glee, but instead it was, we really only gave you half, and here's the other half that we didn't tell you about. And they were our first customer that went live. And that story, so how do you deal with that it's a change management in the company. Could you do it bottoms up, or is it a top down sell? I'm just curious, like what are you finding success there to push through?
One of our customers we work for in Germany, they have this big poster in their lobby, and it says, if you stop becoming better, you have stopped to be good. And I think it's actually, so you need the right mindset. If the company, and especially the leadership, so it's a little bit like top down. So really process mining is a top down approach. Because the one person who is working on a process or within the process, like in the purchasing department, they know their silo, they know what to do, they know their job, and they are not aware what happened before and what will happen with the results afterwards. So they really know their screen, they know what to do. So they have no transparency about the entire end-to-end process. So it needs a certain type of people and responsibility, and also, readiness to face the naked truth. And it's not always pretty. But you need to know what the challenges really are, what the bottlenecks, what the compliance issues are, before you can tackle it and before you can decide how to tackle it. So yeah, I would say, what we do with process mining is definitely top down.
I would agree to this. I always say, in order to be really successful, you need a champion and a sponsor. Yeah. And the champion might be more bottoms up, the sponsor might be more top down, but you need both, right? It's not something that just, it really changes the way that you look at your business processes. And what I think is so exciting, and why I think what works so well about it is the value that you can unlock, right? Like we have customers that after weeks, like we had one customer, they were not sure what to really think and whether they wanted to do a POC. And then I got an intro to the CEO of the company. It was a big distributor in the US, and I told him, let us just come in and look at one process, okay? And he's like, yeah, my team is skeptical. I'm like, look, let us just do a pilot on one. I do it on our dime. You're the CEO. I trust you that once we get started, you'll treat us well, right? If we succeed. So within a week or so, we loaded up the order to cash data right from the order to cash process, and then I was on a call with them 2 weeks later, and I was able to say, hey, you have over $30 million of invoices that you didn't bill, right? You shipped the product, but you didn't bill it. Okay. So at that point, the discussion becomes pretty easy. Now they are everywhere, wow. Right? But that becomes a pretty easy discussion, right? You don't have to talk about automation, transformation, whatever, right? It's like, okay, you're losing $30 million on one thing, right? Like, how about we take this to a broader scale, right? So I think that the really exciting piece is that we couple transformation and automation and intelligent business processes with a value proposition that executives can't ignore, right? And if you take those two things together, you really can make a lot of progress pretty quickly with large enterprises.
Boy, Alex, I wish I met you much earlier, because we walk into a customer and we basically say, we will invest to show you like the value. And we do a similar, we have to do education. Like, what is Codeless? I mean, no code generated, no code allowed. Why? What is it? We spend so much time talking about like the why behind it. We always get to the point to say, just give us a proof point, give us something to show you it in action. And that's, so we followed you. That's really cool to know. And that's, I mean, it's a land, and then you expand from there is what
Yes.
I would assume. It's exactly the model.
Yeah, and exactly, it's a land and expand motion, right? And you asked about category creation, right? Rudy and I have been very early to this category. We said combined we have over 26 years of cross-mining experience, which is a lot. So you know, I thought about this very long and hard, because you know we when we started to do process mining at bigger and bigger scale, I was like, okay, when is the category going to happen, right? When it's like this academic research, there's, you know, we're growing really fast, there's more and more attention on it, but when is the category creation really going to happen? And you know, someone said to me once, like, build the business and the category will follow, right? And I think that's the advice I would give as well. Of course, you need to do evangelization around the category and really talk about it and put content out there. But if you get a lot of customers and make them successful, you know, the category builds itself, right? That's something that happens, and obviously you have to be very consistent and true to your message. But I think the key is to really, is what you do very well, what we do very well, is like find customers and make them really successful. And you know, just a few months ago, Gartner put out their first Magic Quadrant on process mining. And I remember an All-Ends call, I think 10 years ago, so where I was on the team with our team. Like today, Celonis has almost 3,000 people. Back then we had maybe 5, right? And I still remember that All-Ends where I talked about, you know, there's going to be a Gartner Magic Quadrant soon. And because it's such an exciting category, there has to be, right? And then, you know, it's better to be late than wrong. So or to be early than wrong. In this case. So it takes time. I mean, it takes time for people to really recognize it. But there's already a huge adoption within the Global 2000 and companies below. You know, we depending on the region, we have between 30 and 40% of the Global 2000s on board already. So there is a lot of adoption, but category creation takes a lot of time. You know.
Yeah, and Gary, I would also like to add that, you know, process mining it fits best with large enterprises, you know, where you have a lot of cases, a lot of invoices, a lot of purchase orders, big ERP systems, little transparency. If you're a small company of 5 people, you probably don't need process mining, right? Because you still have the overview. So the larger the organization gets, the less overview you have, the more you need a tool like process mining. And of course, you know, we started with the large enterprises. So I remember our first meetings we had was with CIOs and CEOs of large enterprises in Germany, Switzerland, Austria. And, you know, it takes some time to sell a new tool they have never heard about to a person like this.
Yes.
So this is why it took us some time really before it took off.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you still seeing fax machines in customers today? And
hey, listen, we live in Germany.
Wait, but I have to say,
we do.
You know, I spent most of my time in the States now, and I heard something which is crazy. This will blow your mind. Somebody told me, I don't know exactly where the stat came from, but I think it's directionally correct, which was that somewhere around 50% of transactions in the US, business transactions, end up in a mainframe. So they end up in some sort of mainframe, right? This could be a payment in a large bank, right? We work with a lot of the banks, insurance company. But when you think about that, it kind of makes sense, because when you go into, especially financial services, which I know that you're very active there, we are very active there, is you see those mainframes often being the final frontier, right? There's like systems layered on top of it, but it still goes back into the mainframe at some point, because these things are so hard to replace. So I think one of the other really exciting things for process mining is that you can layer it across systems, right? Like it doesn't, even if a transaction ends up in a mainframe and there's multiple systems before it, like a payment flow in a bag or something like that, you don't need to completely unify it, right? You can get the transparency, and then you can start using Angkor as an example to transform the process, right, and build a new process with all this data and intelligence at the center. So I think that's also the exciting opportunity. Why I was very excited once I met you guys.
Yeah, Alex, like if there is anyone watching that wants to be a guinea pig for us here, because I know the mainframe well enough, like in 2000 during the Y2K days, I'm aging myself very well here, but we were literally, we needed a way to communicate with the mainframe from web systems. And so we built the layer that's now today, the way you talk to CICS and mainframe. And we built it and we donated it back to CICS and Hersley, England and IBM. And so we know it inside out and how BMS maps work, for those who don't know, and JCL and COBOL. But what we also know is I've taken 2 million lines of COBOL and assembler and gave it to a vendor and said, can you convert it to Java? So like, we don't need to hire COBOL developers in Japan and everywhere else. And they gave me back like 4 or 6 million lines of like JOBOL, which you could not read, Java, COBOL. And it was what we do know now is our execution engine. And when we met Alex and his founding team and we did this joint workshop of who's who, they looked at us and said, you're an execution engine. Like that's the, and what we know is our execution engine could replace the mainframes engine. And so if there's the ability to basically extract that into our data definition, and then like, there's no more mainframe. Like that to me is, we see everywhere we go, everyone has mainframes, and it's similar. Can I ask, like, so on the enterprise side, large enterprise, I completely get that. On the medium and small businesses, they're still doing these operations, but probably not at the same scale. But like, is there an opportunity to see it like across as an accelerator and say we have an accelerator to do order management or CPQ?
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of customers in this segment below the G2K, right? I wouldn't say small businesses like mom and pop shops, those like SMBs are not necessarily our focus, but we have a strong base in I would say companies north of 1,000 employees, right? Where you have real scale already and real repeatability of business processes, and there you can absolutely apply it. And we have, as a matter of fact, automated our implementation to a large extent for standard systems and processes. So if you do order management on Oracle or procurement on SAP or accounts payable on Workday, those things are pretty well automated already, so that you have a very short time to value.
That's awesome. And then I'm sure you can't go anywhere without being asked about generative AI. And I think we're now all going to be asked about Vision Pro and augmented reality glasses from Apple. But have to ask your opinion. So we've gone through these periods, and RPA at some point was everything's RPA, and the way we see it is you're putting lipstick on top of legacy, and let's just replace the legacy and address it. Like that's how but what is your views of generative AI, how it plays into this role with large language models? Any vision of what the future with Celonis could be with vision goggles from Apple as you walk through a data center? And just like, and I'm saying this as literally we just published about an hour ago our first Forbes article on our views of generative AI related to generating language, which we believe should never happen. Like that's like our view is, programming languages are like ancient Greek, and why would you write ancient Greek programmatically when no one else could read ancient Greek? So let's eliminate the ancient Greek. It's kind of the view. But like, I'd love to hear yours and Rudy's perspective on this. Just what's the future look like? Where are we going?
Yes, I think that, so first of all, on the goggles, give us a little bit of time on that, but I think a spatial interface could be pretty cool, especially for process mining, right? So like exploring your process in 3 dimensions. I think on generative AI, the way obviously there's a hype cycle with those kinds of things. But I think if you compare to RPA, also things in the past, I think there's a lot of substance here, right? Like it's not like, or maybe if you compare to crypto or other things where maybe the substance was a little overblown. I think there is substantial amounts of substance here. It's also far from AGI, right? So AGI is going to take time, but I think the easiest way I think about it is that the cost of reasoning goes down. Meaning it's sort of reasoning becomes increasingly increasingly available and cheap. Because right now, kind of the cost of reasoning is pretty high, right? It's only humans can really do it, and that's pretty expensive. And
we don't do it well, by the way, Alex. So that's not a as a process mining.
By the way, when you explore these generative AI models, right? Like you also realize that the good old-fashioned human intelligence is still quite special. But anyway, let me talk about how I would think about the applications for Celonis, but also in general. So I think the most obvious transformation is the transformation of the engagement layer, right? Meaning that you will interact with software through natural language as opposed to through user interfaces, right? Or other interfaces, right? So I think that's very obvious. And by the way, if you're in New York, next week we have our world tour in New York, and we're actually showing our Celonis world tour, if I can throw that in there. And we're actually showing you can sign up on our website. And
we will be there, by the way. Yes,
yeah,
we are there.
Exactly. Yeah. Gary too. Thank you, Gary. That's awesome. And we actually showcase how LLMs, how you can sort of interact with Celonis in natural language, which is quite exciting, right? Because you can just say, hey, how's my process doing? And, where are my bottlenecks? And those kinds of things. And Celonis will just spit out the answer. I think if you think it, if you think it a little bit longer term, why I'm personally so excited about it is because these models somehow need to understand the unique context of a business and a business process, right? Like even if it was theoretically possible, which is not technically, but all the Fortune 500 companies, all the smaller companies, they won't want to share all of their data with a large language model to train, right? like to create you have rules, you have the prices that you pay to your suppliers, you have the terms that you've negotiated with your customers, your specific a 5-click credit approval process if you're a bank. Like you don't want to share all those secrets with a machine learning model, but you might want to use large language models to help you reason and help you make better decisions or automate things. And what we are effectively doing, especially with our most recent architecture, is that we are creating a digital twin, a living, breathing twin of the business processes in your organization, because we're combining them in a dynamic data model that basically understands the process data, the metrics that you measure, how your processes operate, what your specific rules are, how you do credit approvals, how you do purchasing, who you purchase from, all those things. And then as you couple that with the reasoning capabilities of LLMs, you can really drastically accelerate enterprise processes, increase automation, and also make better decisions. And that's something that's very exciting that will, I think, materialize over the next few years as these models mature, as Celonis mature. So we are very excited about the more shorter-term implications, which we believe are primarily in the engagement layer, but also the deeper use cases that we will see emerging over the next few years.
And now
it's fascinating. If you could do that.
And now imagine adding spatial computing to this. I mean, really, like put on the glasses, so put on the Vision Pro from Apple, walk down the production line, you see one piece being produced, you look at it, and immediately it's like a Celonis app in your glasses, and it will give you like the overview of the entire process related to the piece you are looking at. It will maybe predict, where the bottleneck will be. It will predict the customer satisfaction if you don't produce this in time. So it's like really like a new interface, looking at your business, looking at your processes, physical processes, or support processes in a complete new way.
It's so funny. So this morning I had to take my son for routine blood work. He's, for camp getting ready, and it's all paper, Rudy. It's all like, I always imagine the glasses. It's such a funny thing to think about. Like, that's why I asked about the fax machines. Like, we have to move, like the future. I love yours and Alex's vision. I mean, I am totally like, I think about, walking into like the issues with insurance companies and underwriting. LLMs won't be able to tell the regulator the reasoning why, that based on historical view of the data, but a process could actually walk through the thought process that was used to come up with the logic to say, I like the way you described that, which is it's the marrying of the two to get the reasoning and the process together, which could become something you could show a regulator, say, here's exactly the process we go through, because you don't know what's in someone's head when they're making that decision, but you know the process they followed to get there. And if you could replace that, that would be game changing in insurance. You could see it in underwriting and banking, and know your customer for terrorist checks, like all those things which are highly regulated that we both deal with. would be huge. And are you working in medical? Can I ask, is medical a focus in healthcare?
We actually started a healthcare vertical in the US a couple of years back now. We got HIPAA certified and all that, and we have more and more providers coming on board. We have a lot of life sciences customers, distributors, those we had for many years, but now we are really also ramping up on the payer and provider side. And it's extremely exciting because, one thing we also actually talked about earlier, Rudy and I, is that there is a lot of purpose and process, right? Like making processes better than just save people money or improve customer experience or so. When you apply it in healthcare, it actually saves people's lives. And that's something that we're not just very excited about for business reasons, but also because there's so much purpose in healthcare, and processes are obviously a really important part of improving care and bringing down the cost of care and all those things. So we are quite excited about our investment in healthcare.
That's awesome. And Alex and Rudy, this is amazing. I know how busy you both are. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here and just joining us, Coffee and Codeless, and I look forward to this future of like Celonis uncorked with goggles, and like I could see it. I could see like you could see the process. We could build the app on the fly behind the scenes without one line of code, and you could basically then automate and measure and continuously drive it. I mean, it's a really cool perspective to have, and I love the idea in all industries of what that could do. Any last advice for anyone before we go? I heard Rudy, it sounds like skiing and with your family is your stress release. That's awesome. Alex, what is yours? I know you travel, and your last time I saw you was New York, and what is it that gets what is it that's your, and I've got my Peloton behind me, so on the other side I got to do it like that, but it's which is my release.
No, I don't have too much time, but if I do, I like to play some golf. I'm pretty passionate about that, so I think that's a great way to switch off and just
I love it.
Think about much else, yeah. And there's a lot of process in that too, by the way. You try to make it repeatable, and it's harder than I haven't figured that part out yet, but I'm still working on it.
Repeatable, yeah. I like going out, but it is frustrating when you're not great, which I'm not great. so if you figure out the process to become better, please let me know. And Rudy and Alex, just again, I appreciate all of your time here, and just I know everyone does, and thank you for joining us, and congrats on building such an amazing category company. Thank you. Thanks. Have a great day. I'll see you in New York next week. Yes.